the Campaign to Restore National Housing Rights, which is supported by a policy and research group out of New York by the name of NESRI, the National Economic and Social Rights Initiative. I welcome you here to Detroit, and one thing I want to start off with is the reason why I get involved in a lot of these coalitions, organizations, and movements is because I believe you need multiple strategies if you want to elevate housing to a human right. I myself am formerly homeless. I understand the issues of why we don't realize housing in this country. I stood laying on a piece of cardboard in Miami for 2 years while the government didn't live up to its obligation to actually house me. So once I got myself straight and on the right path, I decided I'm going to fight for this issue, and until I go to my grave, it's something that I want to see realized. So whatever it takes for me to be in that struggle and be involved, I will do. I've made that commitment, and I've made that commitment one of my life's challenges. So with that, I was also the city chair for the first official visit of a UN Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. Raquel Rolnick visited the United States from October through November, October 22nd actually through November 8th of 2009. And for me, it was an opportunity, and as I said in my opening speech, at that time was to sort of put the United States on trial in the International Court of Moral Obligation. I believe it is a moral obligation for our government to support that human right to housing. In New York City, there's $750 million a year spent to house people, to put them in temporary housing and shelters. So I think that's a challenge. They're not living up to the obligation. The shelter complex, or industrial complex, as we like to call it, will grow as big as we want it to, or will allow it to in New York City, if we don't challenge those systems. So I've dedicated myself to challenging that. And I did that in some funny ways with the UN Special Rapporteur. Well, I formed a quick relationship with this lady. I met her at 6 o'clock in the morning when she arrived in New York City after she had just gotten off a flight from Brazil. And the first thing she said to me is, if you can get me 2 shots of espresso, we can go to work. So I took her right to the local espresso shop. Here you go. And we hit the ground running at 8 o'clock. And the first challenge was to go to the federal building in New York City and introduce her to federal officials in HUD. And as I'm doing this, I often speak out about area median income in New York, and that's the way Housing and Urban Development calculates affordable housing in New York. There is a flawed calculation in New York that takes the 5 boroughs and Putnam County, which is a wealthy county north of New York City, and averages it out and says an average family of 4 in New York City should make $70,900. Well, I would argue in East Harlem that the area median income is about $19,500. So it's a flawed calculation. So when you say there's housing being built for people 50% below area median income, it excludes the people it was definitely meant to include. So I thought this was a flawed calculation, and I schooled her on the way to HUD on this calculation. And she walked right in that very building and started challenging folks on area median income, and it was one of those actual recommendations that she put in her report in the end. The second challenge that I got, and it was on the same day, was for local officials in New York City. Now, as a member of Picture the Homeless, an organization I used to work with in New York, we had legislation put before the city council that would force the city council to count vacant spaces in New York City, empty lots and vacant buildings, because I said that's the way you get at root causes of homelessness, by picking people up. They're homeless because they don't have a home. So the formula is simple. The solution is simple to me, but yet our city will still spend $750 million to temporarily house people. You put them in these empty spaces, problem solved. Well, we have a relationship with a council member from District 8 in New York City named Melissa Mark Viverito. And she knows that the organization that I worked for in the past was a very in-your-face type of organization. We would challenge with civil disobedience and direct action, and we would even throw her name under the bus if she didn't do what she said she was going to do when she was elected. So knowing that, and knowing that I'm forming this relationship with this lady on an international level, Melissa Mark Viverito greeted Raquel Rolnick at the door before Raquel could even introduce herself, she said, "Hi, I'm Melissa Mark Viverito, District Council Person from Section 8. I work with Picture the Homeless. I know Rob Robinson." She knows the challenge she's going to get publicly if she didn't introduce herself. The second or the third visit she made in that same day was to state officials, including a very personable and one of those assemblymen in New York City that really gets it, but is often challenged by an electoral system that doesn't really allow or has constraints to allow a person to do what they actually said they were going to do before being elected. So Hakeem Jeffries is one of those assemblymen in New York that is willing to work with people on the ground and those directly affected, but he is often challenged by the system. Hakeem Jeffries was another one that is now meeting with local groups in New York City because, as he put it, if I don't meet with you folks, you're going to tell that lady on me and drag my name through the mud. So however you get your situation across, you have to work towards elevating housing as a human right. And I use multiple strategies in New York City to make that happen. The second way we can make it happen is on an international level. As a member of Picture the Homeless, I went to Budapest, Hungary last summer to work with homeless populations there. We've now formed a relationship with a group that has what they call the Man on the Street, right? They wanted to call it Right to the City, their organization, but the translation didn't happen. But that group is now using direct action and the human rights framework to guarantee people housing in Budapest. And they've been able to sit down now with the Prime Minister in Budapest to start talking about these issues. But when we arrived in Budapest last summer, folks were very passive. They wouldn't even chant. But now they've taken to doing direct action and speaking about human rights and putting it in that framework. So you connect these struggles. I have a connection through the Poverty Initiative with the shack dwellers in South Africa. They've been to the Picture the Homeless office. I've, through my work on the Universal Periodic Review with the U.S. Human Rights Network, been able to form a real cohesive coalition with these folks by doing actions on the South African Embassy in New York. We did a solidarity action, which got on YouTube and kind of went viral around the world, so you connect these struggles. Going back this March to the World Urban Forum, again, able to connect with Raquel Ronig and the National Land Reform Movement in Brazil and sit down with folks and hear what their problems are. But again, all these struggles are connected, and this was an opportunity, working with the UN and the Universal Periodic Review, of really putting housing as a human right in the right framework and being able to elevate it and getting folks to sit down and understand the struggles and the challenges. But I think what was empowering, again, for the community in New York was getting before this rapporteur on adequate housing and being able to tell those stories. That was very empowering in New York City, and I think there's a different level of conversation happening now with the people that are directly affected because of that work, because of the Universal Periodic Review, because of the visit of the UN Special Rapporteur. So I think it is important that we start to put housing in that framework. This country has never had a comprehensive housing program or a housing plan to move forward. So you have to use multiple strategies to make this happen. And I think while some people may say you're stretching yourself thin, and can you really be effective in all these different arenas? I would challenge those folks to say, I think so. And we have to continue to work, continue to start to articulate housing as a human right and start to talk about it in regular terms. The UPR, the Universal Periodic Review, which is coming up in November, will be that opportunity. So with that, so it's time. All right. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to be here, and I want to thank the U.S. Human Rights Network for recognizing the work that I do and taking me out of the local community and giving me an opportunity to get in that international community and just raise the voices of those directly affected.